I'm going to do is I just want to quickly go over the agenda or program. Okay, Oupa has typed in, thank you, Ivor, pleased to join. Well, it's very nice to have you on board, Oupa. Thank you. Okay, so as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, I've just put together a program. It's not a brief program, but we don't have to deal with all the points. But basically, I want to just give you some updates in terms of where we are with the Management Information Portal, our designation centers. I want to talk about the target markets for the professional body. I want to talk about governance, which includes talking about the three primary subcommittees and the National Council. I want to talk about marketing and advocacy, and particularly I also want to talk about the IAB's role in marketing and advocacy. And then I want to talk about the outstanding issues, or what I regard as outstanding issues. Please feel free at any stage to raise any additional points. Good. So if that's okay with you, Kantha, you want to say something?
Yeah, before we start, I don't think Joey and you have met.
No.
Just to give a little bit of background, Joey is now in charge of, well, together with Oupa, is in charge of the Education Council. So, we've split the Education and Transformation Forum councils.
Yes.
And Joey is so Joey's going to run the council, and I think he wants to know, we need to know how we can work with the professional body and compensate it in what we do in the councils.
Of course.
And then Joey Ivor is the person that's running professional body. And I'm sure Ivor will give you a little bit of background on professional body as well. And I think if you have any questions, you can ask Ivor, because I know we had a previous meeting and there were a few questions that came up there. So I think that's it from my side.
Very pleased. My frustration is. Hello, everybody. My frustration is.
Joey speaking here.
Hello, Joey. That this is really the first time believe it or not, this is the first time that I'm actually getting to interact with a proper subcommittee of the IAB that the professional body, if you want, can report to. So this is fantastic. Thank you, Oupa. Thank you for Joey for being here, and for Kantha for organizing this. All right. So, Kantha, if that's all right with you, I'm going to start.
Yes.
Okay. So, the Management Information Portal is ready. All the bells and whistles have been created. The portal of the professional body is the point of contact for anybody wishing to seek professional designation from the professional body. It is where they would apply. It is where their feedback would be given from. It is where their personal vaults of information and evidence would be built. It is the place from which the assessors would launch their assessment. And it is the place where the final certification certificate will emanate from. It is not the place where the summative assessment process will take place. That is a manual place, but the portal really is the point of contact for the industry, and it is ready for beta readiness. Access to the portal is via the people from the designation centers, and I'll talk about them in a moment, who are responsible for, let me say, target management, the management of the target candidates themselves. So the only people who will have password access to the portal will be the designation centers and obviously the administrators, but the public and any other organizations wishing to interact with the professional body would do it through the portal by coming online. All the information would be on board, etc., etc. As well as information, by the way, about the patron. And the patron in this instance is the IAB South Africa. Remembering we're saying that we do not want people to be able to buy service from the professional body unless their company, if they're employed, unless their company is a member of the IAB South Africa, because ultimately we want the IAB to hold its members accountable for its professional conduct and its behavior, etc., and in the process to be able to hold its employees who are professionally designated by the professional body accountable. So the professional body doesn't want to run ethics. It wants the IAB to run the ethics of its members and the employees of its members. Before I move on, any questions or comment in that regard?
So just for me to catch up a little bit on the management information portal, I think you quite succinctly went through in point form where it's supposed to be or what it's supposed to do. But do you mind just elaborating a little bit, explaining it to somebody who's never heard of it before?
Sorry, Joe. Okay, so let me come back a bit. In fact, let me type as we're doing this so that it makes it very, very clear. I'm going to type in. So the management information portal is a place where information is available regarding professional body services, where applications can be submitted for designations. In other words, an individual would apply to be professionally designated, where information and evidence for profile and for portfolio building and for I'm going to call it credentialing, but basically it's references from existing employees can be uploaded into personal vaults. So the individual has a personal vault where assessment and moderation of application results takes place, where remediation is ordered from. In other words, turning around to the candidate and saying there are areas that need to be remediated, where resubmissions for designation take place, where certification, so the issuing of a designation certificate takes place, where continuous professional development is driven from, but not offered from. In other words, a calendar of continuous professional development that individuals can book themselves into or be booked into, but the actual provision of the continuous professional development element would not take place on this portal.
Sure.
Where communities are built, and here those communities would be chambers. So, for example, agencies, publishers, consultants, brands, providers. I can't remember all the communities, Kantha, you can correct me. But anyway, those are the majority. In other words, reflecting or mirroring your councils. So the communities are built being chamber communities, being assessor communities, because also on this portal will be the registration of assessors. Let me just make a note of that. So assessor communities, I'm just going to say here, registration of assessors, just to be clear. So communities are built around chambers, assessor communities, moderator communities, provider, that's whole learning programs, as well as provider of CPD programs. Association communities, so how do you spell association? Association communities, and finally the confederation once we get going, and that could be a statutory charter council. So I'll just quickly do this just to make it very clear and not confusing. Okay, so that's
great. Thanks for that, Ivo. It makes a lot of sense.
All right. Sorry, I know it sounds very elaborate, but basically this is what's going on. The beta readiness of the site will be based around all of this being on it, and then these communities being built and being able to communicate. And then finally, communication from the portal will be by way of SMS, email, newsletter, and resource communication. So it's a communication server as well.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Makes 100% sense. Thank you.
Fantastic. Sorry about how much I've put down, but that's basically what our portal has been designed to do. By the way, I'm going to just add something just so that everybody's aware of it. I'm going to call it closed intra-group activities. And those are the activities which are driven between the professional body and designation centers, between designation centers and their own database of graduates. That's protected territory. So I think those are the two primary intra-groups which not everybody else will have access to, if that makes sense.
Would designation centers be described as centers of education?
It's a little later on the agenda. I'm going to go into what they are. But basically,
all right, great. Thank you.
This then becomes the, let me just do one more thing. Sorry. Features. Let me just say that these are the features. Okay, so there you go. These are the features of the management information system. These are the features. These are the communities that are built. This is the communication. And this is the closed intra-group activities driven by the portal. That basically describes the portal. Right. Moving on, let's talk about the designation centers. So we have up and moving, I don't want to say running, but we have up and moving our first designation center, and that's the Gauteng Designation Center, which is driven by Blue Magnet. I'm not sure if you guys know Gillian Mayer and Kerry James, but they run Blue Magnet. We've walked a long way. It's literally a 10-month path to get the designation center separate from the Blue Magnet training organization established, and they've done a lot of work in this regard. The other two designation centers that we've commenced discussion with is Blue Magnet, is Red and Yellow for the Western Cape, and is DigitLab for KZN. While the intention would be to manage those three designation centers as a group, the reality is that at this moment in time, we're piloting on the Blue Magnet Designation Center, and second stage rollout will then be the Red and Yellow and the DigitLab Designation Centers. The purpose of the Designation Center is to take an organization, which essentially all three of these are training organizations and therefore have a database, a critical mass database. Practical example, Blue Magnet has a 10,000 trainee or graduate database. Red and Yellow apparently also bigger than that number, and DigitLab in KZN a much smaller database. But these are the three organizations that have a critical mass of people who should be ready in one way or another for designation. We have three bands of designations. They're the technical, the operational, and the professional designation. There is a fourth designation level, and that's the master designation level. But that designation level is really an honorary one, which is awarded to someone, not that they apply for at the end of the day. We are commencing with the Blue Magnet, and then stage 2 will be Red and Yellow and DigitLab. It's taken a lot longer to get to this point than we would have hoped for. But that's the nature of the industry, and I suppose to some extent that's also buy-in from the industry. But we're well on the road to getting there with Blue Magnet, and my hope is we're on the road to getting there with Red and Yellow and DigitLab within a 6-month period of Blue Magnet having started their activities as well. The target market. Sorry. So before we go any further, the designation center, its job is to provide all of the services for the professional body that needs to be provided to the people who want to apply for designation. And those services include a verification of their qualification. It includes building their portfolio of evidence against the designation framework. It includes ensuring that their vaults contain things like, for example, their references from their employers. In other words, that we verify their qualification, their experience, and their behavior, because that's what professional designation is. It's saying you're a professional because you are qualified, either because you've been RPL'd or you have a qualification, you have a portfolio of evidence evidencing your experience, and you're in good standing with your employer. You don't have warnings, etc., against you. They've given good references. So those three things in combination allow us to professionally recognize and therefore designate you. And so that's the work that gets done by the designation centers. And thereafter, once those individuals have been designated, making sure that those designated professionals or practitioners then participate in continuous professional development, which is what happens over a 3-year period after they've been designated. They have to participate in continuous professional development, which, by the way, includes participating in your bookmarks, participating in the IAB summit, etc., etc. Includes all of that, for which they can get CPD points, so that at the end of the 3-year period, they can be re-designated or re-registered for their designations. And that's how a professional body works. That's the meat and potato business of a professional body, while the professional body, together with the associations which make up that professional body, are busy marketing the value and the benefit and the value proposition of the designation to the world at large. And our value proposition to the world at large with the designation centers and the associations is to say, wouldn't you rather employ someone who is professionally accountable to a professional body because their practitioner competence has been recognized and they're participating in lifelong learning? And to the public at large, wouldn't you rather deal with a business who only employs people who are professionally designated by a professional body and therefore accountable for the quality of their work? And in the publishing fraternity, as much as saying accountable for making sure that there's no fake news. I'm sorry to just throw that in, but that's a typical value that needs to be marketed around the difference between someone who's designated and someone who's not designated. That difference being that they're essentially accountable. And that's why you create a professional body. The range of designation centers is not going to be limited to these three organizations. It's just that our starting point is with these three organizations. Once we've got the designation center model working properly, we want to have many more critical mass organizations being designation centers, including an organization that will employ, let's say, 100 or more people or 50 or more people who are digital practitioners in one way or another, where that company can be an internal designation center for those 50 people, getting them to the point of professional recognition, and then taking responsibility for their CPD lifelong learning and for their re-registration. Oupa says, "Dear Iva, I regret I'm having technical difficulties, cannot get my audio to work. Since apologies, I will have to schedule a separate update with you. Best regards, Oupa. Leaving the meeting now." I'm just quickly typing to Oupa. Oupa, I will send you a link to this presentation. I'm recording what we're talking about, so I can send him a link to this presentation. All right, thank you. Any questions before I carry on?
At this point, no. I think everything seems quite clear thus far.
Kantha, from your point of view?
No questions from me.
So,
sorry, the designation centers, are they already set?
No.
Or will you be looking at new designation centers?
Our first designation center is Blue Magnet. That's where we're well along the way to launching its activities to its graduates. But we want as many designation centers as we can have operating.
Okay.
It's just,
so if anyone inquires with us, then we can just send you the contact details.
If there's a large employer, let me think, Media24, for example. I'm just using them as an example. So Media24 could quite easily be its own designation center for employees of Media24 businesses who work in digital. And so we would want to talk to them about being an internal designation center. External would be Red and Yellow, DigitLab, and any other organizations that come along down the line. There's no restriction. The real criteria is, do they have access to a critical mass market, either their own database of graduates or members or something like that?
Okay. Cool. Thank
And
you.
obviously, our objective, and this was a stated objective by the IAB, was that the IAB wanted to see us putting things like this into the rest of Africa as well, and therefore having footprints in the rest of Africa. So, let's not lose track of the fact that once we've got our South African provinces covered, we then want to look at a NEPAD kind of an arrangement, not just a South African arrangement.
Okay.
The big thing is amongst those designation centers, we want to have created a community of common sharing and common practice as far as continuous professional development, coursing and programming is concerned, because it doesn't have to be a competitive environment to that extent. Practical example might be that Blue Magnet has specialization in agency work, whereas Red and Yellow might very well have specialization in publishing training. So the bottom line is between them, they can cover both agency and publishing training. I'm just using those as examples. It will be a bad day, a dark day, if we don't have designation centers working together. And our objective as a professional body is to try and encourage that. And I know it's a lofty, noble, objective, but we've got to try and head for it to some extent or another down the line. Good. All right. So our target markets. Our target markets short term are the designation center communities of graduates and companies. Our medium term are mainstreaming within our 3 provinces. In other words, going beyond the designation center graduate database, but going into all the companies in those provinces. And long term, mainstreaming into the other provinces that aren't involved in these pilots. Or at least being able to cover all 9 provinces in some form or another. So we have a short, a medium, and a long-term target market strategy. As far as governance is concerned, sorry, any questions about target market?
No, not from my end.
As far as governance is concerned, the professional body works through a series of subcommittees. And as things stand at the moment, we have 3 active subcommittees. We have a designation subcommittee, a provider subcommittee, and a quality assurance subcommittee. The designation subcommittee takes care of developing the designation framework and mapping the qualifications to jobs to designations, and then also creating an RPL framework. Although RPL is not active at the moment, it must, by law, be active within 5 years of us having started as a professional body. And what RPL does is it says, if you're doing the job, but you don't have a qualification to do the job, but you're doing the job, you've been doing it for 5 years, we should be in a position to recognize your highest level of competence for access to the summative assessment for our professional designation. Not to give you a qualification, but to recognize that you're ready to go through our designation process. That's what RPL is about. And our second stage of rollout will be implementing an RPL framework. Our designation subcommittee activities will be operational by the 20th of January. Our provider subcommittee's activities by the 15th of February. Now, this is, Kantha, you have previously asked questions around providers. The provider subcommittee takes care of a policy framework and an operational implementation for provider endorsement, for learning program endorsement, and for continuous professional development endorsement. When I use the term endorsement, please understand it's accreditation, but you can't talk about accreditation because that's a SACWA protected word and concept. But essentially, we're saying that the professional body wants to accredit training providers, accredit their products, which are whole learning programs or continuous professional development elements. And we want the process to be begun by the 15th of January as well through that subcommittee as the lead committee, driving that with the training provider fraternity. Of course, there is some kickback from training providers who don't want to be centrally accountable for what they do, particularly those that are not accredited by the South African Qualifications Authority. But this is something we just have to continuously be working around and working through. Our third subcommittee is the Quality Assurance Subcommittee. And that subcommittee takes care of summative assessment for the designations. Every single designation must have a summative assessment. It might very well be that the summative assessment is just a multiple choice test. That's fine at the lower levels. At the more senior levels, it would be as much as a case study or even a board examination. But the job of the Quality Assurance Subcommittee is to delineate and design and authorize the summative assessment activities for every one of those professional designations. The Quality Assurance Committee takes care of RPL management for access. It takes care of the training and the registration of assessors, the training and the registration of line managers as an extension of performance management assessors. So where, for example, we're saying to companies, your line manager is part of our assessment machine of someone who wants a designation. They do performance management either once or twice a year or maybe more frequently. We will be training those line managers in their performance management activities and techniques. And we're going to be asking them for evidence of competency and application so we can help build the individual's portfolios of evidence as we go through the process. The training and the registration of moderators who check on the work of the assessors and the line managers, normally on a ratio of 1 to 10. Operational and personnel standards management. This is when you turn around to the South African Bureau of Standards and say, all of those operational standards and all of those individual standards for digital practitioners, we want to be the secretariat through the South African Bureau of Services or directly with organizations like the International Standards Organization. Obviously, I'm blue skying here because this is once we've got the professional body going, but that's what a professional body is partially responsible for, taking responsibility for the content and the quality of those standards. So outside of subcommittees, from a governance point of view, there is a national council, and our national council can only get running once the subcommittees are properly structured. And the National Council will be launched on the 28th of February 2019. Any questions before I carry on?
Yes. Do you mind just scrolling slightly back up? So the first subcommittee, the designation subcommittee, point number 2, qualifications mapped to jobs and mapped to designations. The last time we met with Kantha, Oupa, and Paula, essentially we were having a session around, really defining the purpose of the Education Council, seeing that the Education Council was previously part, combined with the Transformation Council. So one of the first things that we wanted to do was just to really define exactly what is the proposition for the Education Council, and then further define what is the one thing that we'd like to focus on as a first initial project coming out of the Education Council for 2019. And where we landed was to execute the process of career mapping. And the career mapping, I think, sounds like it's pretty much, well, it could be pretty much the same as qualification mapped to jobs or mapped to designations. So the question that I have here around that is it indeed the same process that you are envisioning over here to do career mapping and then from there to designations?
Can I jump in here and say this? That sure. Ideally we would like one framework for digital that says, here are the jobs in digital, or let's say the job responsibilities in digital. Here are all the qualifications which might be available, either SAQA or non-SAQA qualifications. And if you follow from the qualifications through to the jobs, this is how the jobs map to the professional designations. Now, within that, each designation center will certainly bring their own mapping to the party, which means the professional body and that subcommittee, which is the designation subcommittee, will be responsible for integrating each of their frameworks. If the IAB has its own framework, and in the last meeting I attended, Paula mentioned you have your framework. So once you've finished your framework as the IAB, we want to integrate that equally into the one integrated framework. And so we will have career path from qualification through to job through to professional recognition. Absolutely, for the sector of digital, which will be based on an industrial slice or an industrial silo, and all of those industrial silos will be combined into a sectoral silo. The importance being that's what SAQA stands for, the South African Qualifications Authority stands for, is maximum articulation between those silos or between those industries, as much as articulation as you can actually get out at the end of the day.
Okay, I'm with you 100%. So essentially, the job that we're talking about doing is still a relevant job. It's not being duplicated here. It is now going to form part of, as you say, a sector and then a subsector.
Joey,
the platform is in integration.
Can I say this? I'm volunteering to facilitate your mapping exercise that you're talking about within the IAB, so that whatever is done in accordance with an integrated sectoral kind of a framework.
That would be great. I mean, that kind of guidance, would be great in the sense that it would be, instead of us starting from scratch with a framework, we could work within a framework which is going to plug in and integrate seamlessly with what the management information portal is seeking to do.
Look,
great. I just want to clarify that, to clarify whether or not there's a duplication of efforts, and rather it's not a duplication of efforts, but rather, this is what we're doing would then be incorporated into the platform that you're establishing.
So if there isn't a single person who's sort of facilitating or at least involved in all of the activities, there might be a lot of duplication. That's why I'm volunteering, so that it builds on and it integrates whatever's been done in other places rather than sets up something where there might be duplication involved. The kind of people you would want to involve around the table for that exercise would be, firstly, human resource practitioners, the people that do the hiring, the people that do the performance management in the workplaces, and then also the training providers who train for those jobs. Those are the kinds of people you would want in the room when we start that activity.
Sure.
Kantha, you're very silent in this regard.
No. Yeah, so I was also in the meeting with Joey, Paula, and Oupa, and the mapping was something that, we actually want to get done, but we also mentioned it in the AGM. The USA has not the mapping system, but they also have a professional body. And when the courses that they offer, they get points, or a person gets points after they complete those courses, which then gives them more credit towards a certain qualification in the professional body. Is that how this mapping system is going to work, or will it work totally different to that?
So if I can put it this way, in South Africa, there is a very sharp distinction drawn between the world of the training provider and the world of the professional body. Professional body doesn't give qualifications, it gives professional recognition through designation. And so that's why the world of the training provider needs to be completely separate from the world of the training from the professional body in terms of the result, the actual qualification or the designation. They're two separate instruments. So if the USA has a training program in place from which you get a qualification that gets you recognition at a particular level, it is the relationship between the qualification and the level of recognition that the professional body would be interested in, not that the professional body would give a qualification. It recognizes a qualification which is being given by the IAB International, if I can put it that way. So they need to be separate organizations almost, if I can put it that way.
Okay.
If I had
cool, yeah. If you can help us with the mapping.
So Kantha, I'm volunteering to facilitate a one-day workshop, as long as you can get everyone into the room and you can get a facility, etc., so that we can get that mapping started. And basically, my instruction to the people attending will be: bring your job descriptions, bring along your job titles, etc., for digital in your workplaces, so we can lay them out, put them on the table. And then let's start unpacking the qualifications that train to those job descriptions. And once we've done that, let's take those job descriptions and fit them into our 3 professional designation bands: technician, operator, professional practitioner. Then we've done something very important for the industry. We've given them a career path that says you start here, you progress here, that's how you move up. And eventually the highest level of professional recognition will be a chartered digital practitioner potentially. And thereafter, the next level will be a master designation that's conferred upon you for a variety of other reasons, not that you apply for. Then we've got a very, very nice career path.
Okay.
That sounds great. It sounds like a great starting point. Tell me, that those designations there, those levels, are they reflected anywhere in the document, just as a reference?
Not in this document. They're reflected in all of our previous documents, but let me do this for you. Right at the very end here, let me just add here, just so that we're very, very clear. Let me just add here. So, let's call them designations. So the designation.
Yeah, just as notes.
So there's a technician category, there's an operator category, there's a professional practitioner category, professional practitioner, and then there's a master category of designation. So these three here, so that would be level 1, a band 1 really, but that will be level 2, that will be level 3, and that one over there would be a, I don't want to call it honorary, I'm going to say a conferred level. So the first three an individual would apply for. And by the way, you can, if you want to, have sub-levels within each of these as well. In other words, you can have a level 1A and a level 1B, depending on how intricate you eventually end up getting, based on what that mapping process actually tells you. Does that make sense?
%.
So just to give you an example, so for example, a person at this level would be called a professional technical practitioner in digital, and then it might go even further to say agency or publishing or consulting. And if it's consulting, it might very well be consulting internal, the guys who work in brands, or consulting external, who are your real consultants. So there's your technician. Whereas from an operator point of view, it would be professional operational practitioner in digital. Level 3 would be chartered professional digital practitioner. Now, why is this important? It's important because it's what the people put behind their name, and this here would be a master professional digital practitioner. But it's important because it's the same as a chartered accountant or a chartered engineer, etc. We're now talking about a chartered digital practitioner. We're talking about a chartered we're talking about a professional technical practitioner in digital, professional operational practitioner in digital. Suddenly we have a name to put behind a face on a poster as you're coming down the escalator at Oliver Tambo. It becomes aspirational, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make it aspirational. So,
100%. This is actually quite exciting. Really love this.
That's great, man. It's so nice to have someone who's talking to me. I'm sorry to say that, but it's actually great. Since Kantha's come on, it's fantastic. There's a face I can talk to. All right, moving on. Good. So as far as marketing and advertising is concerned, what we're planning here is and please forgive my labels and my language, but it's an It's Coming roadshow to companies, warning them as a teaser of what's planned in the professional body, conscripting pilot member companies, national award ceremonies, national CPD conferences. Now, the purpose of a national CPD conference, for example, your summit conference, is to say that if there are 10 speakers at a conference, therefore there are 10 sessions. every one of those sessions can be mapped to one or more of the professional designations. So those people who are attending the designations immediately get continuous professional development points for attending and participating in those sessions. And there are different levels you can award those points at. For example, you can award a point for attending, but there might be an interactive exercise where if they contribute, they can get more points, an assessment where they could get even more points, the opportunity to write about what they've attended as additional points, etc., etc., etc. So this is a general thing about marketing and advocacy of what we're trying to do. It's an ongoing set of activities around marketing and advocacy that we'd be focusing on here. And that's, to be honest, within your industry, that's where we need the IAB to take the lead amongst member companies of these activities that we want to have planned. Kantha, are you still with me?
Yeah, no, I'm still here. I was going to ask you a question, but it's not related to the professional body. So maybe I'll ask you later.
No, you can ask it. It's on your mind, so just ask it.
Ava?
Yes.
So, we are busy with the summit series.
Yes.
And we want to have a summit series session every month up to the summit in bookmarks.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Paula wants to know, can we, so currently when people buy tickets and stuff, can they claim that against skills development or anything?
So at the moment,
not really.
So now hold on, let me
ask. Any benefit to them besides coming to the summit?
Can you hear me, Kantha? Kantha, can you hear me?
You're breaking up.
You hear
I can hear you now, though.
Okay, so
yes, I can hear you.
I love your question because let me explain. At the moment, your members cannot claim what they spend on those summits. They can't claim it as skills development expenditure because those sessions are not accredited and they're not recognized for CPD purposes. However, our CPD activity will map your summits into the designation framework, which means that we're saying to people, you have to go to these summits because you get CPD points for these summits so that you can re-register for your designation every 3 years. The moment we've done that, the moment there's a formal mapping and there's if you want a certificate issued for attendance at a summit, which gives them CPD points towards their professional designation, they're automatically entitled to count that as skills development spend. There are 8 categories for skills development spend. It would fall under the last 3 categories of the skills development spend. So they're absolutely entitled to do that once those summits have been mapped into the CPD framework for the designations.
Okay, that's perfect. But how long will that take, Ivo? Will that only be for the next lot of summit series that we have?
Well,
or could we start that earlier?
Let me answer your question in 2 ways. We can get, during our mapping workshop, we can actually go a stage further and we can map your summits into the designation framework there and then. We can say, right, now we know what the designations are. We know what jobs relate to the designations and what qualifications relate to those jobs. We go one stage further to say which summits would be ideal from a CPD purpose to map into the designation framework. The moment we've done that, we've formalized the summits. We've formalized the recognition of the summits. Then what we do is we say, right, if you've run those same summits before, then the moment someone becomes certified, if there's proof that they attended that summit, they would already get CPD points in there for the next 3-year cycle.
Okay. That's perfect.
Okay. Good. Just moving on then to the final point, which is the outstanding issues. The first thing we need to do is develop a memorandum of understanding between the IAB and the professional body with regard to its status as a patron. In other words, formalize its status as a patron in the professional body and what that means, particularly in terms of taking its loan account and converting that into a financial credit for the members of the IAB to be able to get discounted services from the IAB4. Then, as far as ethical delegation is concerned, saying that as far as the management of the code of ethics is concerned for the practitioners who are designated, who are employed by member companies of the IAB, we want to hold the IAB accountable for managing that code of ethics rather than the professional body doing it. So this entrenches the IAB role in the sector. And then the third thing in that MOU will be member advocacy and the professional body branding responsibility amongst the members. And the point I'm trying to make is we don't want, I don't want the professional body to talk to your members about issues that the IAB should be talking to your members directly about, because it then sets up an alternative a source of communication that can only muddy the IAB's credibility along the line. Ken, your thoughts about that?
Okay, and then Iva, this memorandum of understanding, do you currently have one that we can work off, or how do we draw that up? Do we draw it up on our side?
We have to sit down and put it together.
Okay. Okay, cool. Well, will that be something that, Joey, do you think your council can handle that, or should we as IAB should handle that for now?
I think it's an IAB. Well, actually,
initiative for now.
Kantha, why don't we just say this? Why don't you?
Either way, it's fine.
You know what? I think
you don't have a council.
Why don't you, Joey, Oupa, and myself?
You know what? I think it's appropriate for it to sit within the Education Council.
Guys, can I make this proposal? Why don't you, Joey, Oupa, and myself just have another go-to meeting specifically about the MOU? I'll make proposals. You can add, you can take away, so that we've got the basis of an MOU that I can then just formulate.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now that I'm thinking about Kantha, I think it is something that should be sitting within the Education Council. So yeah, we'll get it done. And yeah, agree with your proposal, Eva. So we'll take that.
So guys,
yeah, I think once we've got the groundwork, then you can take it to the Education Council to add and delete and to revise it.
All right. So basically, what I'll do then is I'll send you both this document that we've been through. I'll send you the recording or a link to the recording we've just made, and then let's just keep talking. Just schedule monthly meetings so that it doesn't take 6 months before we chat again.
Yes.
100%. Eva, I'm going to take you up on your offer to facilitate the initial discussion around the career mapping. I think any assistance that will get us moving in the right direction as quickly as possible is appreciated. There are a number of individuals that have already started the process of career mapping, so have done the work in the various sectors, whether it's publishing agency and stuff like that, who have been doing that within their own specific fields. Our job is to get those people together and then get us all in one room with your facilitation and help us just start the process. I think that it'll definitely just give us a speed in terms of like starting the process and getting to where it needs to get to. And I think that it'd also be appropriate to be doing it with you so that whatever we're doing is in line with the professional body. It would be a waste for us to go ahead and do stuff on our own, only to come back and meet with you later, and we've gone in different directions. So yeah, that offer is appreciated, and I'll certainly will be taking you up on that. So we should not be meeting in 6 months, but rather hopefully within the next month we should have set something up.
So I'm actually just putting down here action.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And I'm just putting down action points here where I'm saying I will propose the mapping workshop, which takes place before the end of January. I will also set up a meeting before the end of November this year for us to finalize the MOU.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
Great.
Good. Guys, thank you. That was fantastic. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. Thank you both.
Thank you, Ivo. That was very informative.
All right. Excellent. Joey.
Thank you for that. Very enlightening. I think the work is great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.